I'm gonna forward this stuff because I think you might not have any cool thing about it. Um, so another chart that you can use by simply having those two things, as I mentioned, the cycle times itself, when you start something and when you finish something. So in Scrum or in Kanban, it could be when you start doing the work and when you actually get the work done. You can actually measure the cycle time between those two things or those multiple workflows, right? And you can start to do something called Monte Carlo simulations, which is basically in actionable Agile, which is a tool, or Kanbanines. These are computational algorithms. All it means is taking all of your historical data, i.e., all of your throughput meaning the number of things that you complete per unit of time, i.e., 10 stories per week, 10 stories per month, 20 stories per blah blah blah, 2 epics per 6 months, whether your measure is, you can quantify that and look at all the historical throughput of that given type of work, and then you can forecast based upon that using a simulation called Monte Carlo. And all it is just basically using your own historical data to produce some form of forecasting, not estimation. Estimation is almost finger in the air. Forecasting uses your empirical, data to make some form of insights or predictions, should we say, with a given confidence level. So in this Monte Carlo, for example, Monte Carlo simulation, sorry, there's about I believe 1 million trials. You can see 1 million trials have been done with this team's data. And I basically use the data from, I think, last 2 sprints. Because if you use data beyond, say, the last 7 sprints or 4 sprints, and your team has changed and the work has changed and blah, 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 the previous historical data is no longer that relevant to you. So I always go with, say, the last couple of sprints worth of data, then we do a forecast based on that. But again, it depends, all depends. The consultant's favorite word, right? It depends, but it does depend. Data does depend. I want to bring you to a gentleman who once stated, so W. Edward Demings, he actually said in his book, The New Economics, I believe, in God we trust, all others must bring data. It's a very profound statement, right? Saying that we should never trust people. Otherwise, we should trust, we should only trust God, but in everything else, we should have data to really make some form of insights or make some wisdom, patterns of communication or statements. We shouldn't really make willy-nilly, analyses without data. Data is the currency of today's world, as you know it. Data sciences, data teams, cybersecurity teams, all different domains, across software and non-software teams are using data now to create some form of insights and analysis and look at trends, etc., to make some form of decisions for the future. Many big companies do that. Don't even have to name any, to be honest with you, but it's all the same. So what we do with this is that the Monte Carlo is quite relevant because here I've said, use this Monte Carlo simulation. How many, how long will it take, to, so it says total items complete. Yeah, sorry. So how many stories can my team get done in the next 62 days? And at that time, I think 62 days was a very key mark for my team. And they were 62 days away from this fixed, deadline, drop deadline, right? That some senior stakeholder had fixed in, right, because of funding decisions, etc. So the 62 days was the fixed, time period in which you can do as much as you can, and therefore the only thing that gives, right, or one of the only thing that gives is your throughput, right? So if you've got a fixed date, then you look at the throughput or how much you can forecast for them, right? So the Monte Carlo was really helpful in that particular context, and we could forecast it that way. So, and there's also that was the how chart. How many stories can we get done per unit of time? And there's another flip on it, which is right. When will be done? So to answer, the stakeholders' most favorite question in most organizations, right? Here's a pot of money. Here's a few teams. Here's a value stream. When you're going to get the work done, right? That's the most important thing that stakeholders are largely, really interested in, because they've invested in it, right? And they funded it, and so rightfully they want to know what's the return of investment, right? And how long are things going to take? And obviously we work in a highly complex, uncertain, highly ambiguous, and highly volatile world, right? VUCA, as you know it. VUCA is the acronym for, volatile, highly volatile, uncertain, highly complex and ambiguous environments, right? COVID is a perfect example. How many of you have probably changed the way that you work purely because of COVID impacts, and you're now have to work remotely on a Zoom call and have to say, yes, can I hear you? Or can you please repeat that? Or whatever those lovely words are these days, right? In people. So the whole way that the globe has started to work has changed because of a global pandemic. And that's an external factor, highly volatile, complex markets. Financial institutions are in highly complex markets. The stock market, from what I remember back in, was it March or April last year, and seeing the lot of stocks plummeting, highly volatile market conditions. And as soon as you get some stability, vaccination, AstraZeneca, or vaccination, Pfizer has now come into play. Some level of stability starts to come into play, and the market starts to stabilize a little bit, right? Or start to pick up a bit. Some level of confidence and certainty has been bought, and therefore you can make some level of predictions because you've now got some predicated analysis that you can make some judgments upon, or make some not judgments, but make some recommended options for. Because now okay, right now I can fly somewhere, but I can't really fly anywhere because everything's in the red zone. But I can fly to blah blah blah. So you've got some level of prediction there, or confidence that if you book a flight tomorrow on whatever airline, that's going to get rejected because it's in the red zone, or maybe in a month's time things might change. So we should use Monte Carlo simulations quite carefully as well, not to predict everything. And remember, this is based upon something called Little's Law. And Little's Law states essentially that the average cycle time, i.e., the average length of time it takes to get something done, is equals the average work in progress. So the average items that you have in your queue divided by the average throughput, i.e., the average amount of work that you get done. There is a symbiotic, maybe not even symbiotic, but there is a clear relationship, a direct relationship between cycle times, throughput, and the amount of queues you got on your backlog, or in your work, or the number of projects you got, or the number of work streams you got to get done. So there is a clear relationship between these three things, and therefore, we shouldn't just take it willy-nilly that the Monte Carlo simulation is always accurate, because it is not. It is, we are working in highly complex circles, not in manufacturing plants, right? So therefore, there has to be some level of rigor here, and we do need other metrics to therefore quantify or qualify some of these other measures. So remember, what the key thing I would say is no one metric is correct. No one metric should be your vanguard for focusing on what continuous flow or what flamingo strategy should look like. You should look at all three of these metrics. The amount of queues you got in the system, cycle time, how long it gets to get things done, and then of course throughput. Then productivity is what Troy McGinnis, I believe, calls it.